Welcome to round 12 of Pro Tour Theros here in Dublin, Ireland. We've got Sam Black on your left, Makihito Mihara on the right, and both these players very, very devoted in their own way, but to two different colors, Zach.
Yeah, you've got Mihara with basically a base green devotion deck, light splashes of red for Domri Raid and Xenagos the Reveler. That devotion powering Nylea, God of the Hunt, and importantly, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, powering out huge fatties in the monstrous ability. Sam playing mono blue devotion with 4 main deck Thassa, Gods of the Sea, as well as Biden of Thassa to draw tons of cards, Cyclonic Rift to cast the kicker on, and 1 Nykthos Shrine to Nyx of his own.
And a Burning Tree Emissary here from Mihara. He's always able to get some super fast starts. Obviously, green has loads of acceleration, but with Nykthos, it just gets crazy, right?
Yeah, a very interesting draw from Mihara. The deck tends to want to accelerate mana, but instead he just casts 2 2-drops. Doesn't really have any mana acceleration. Then from Sam's side, we see him keep a 2-land hand with 3 Master of Waves, double Biden of Thassa. All he really wants to do right now is draw some lands, because Mihara doesn't really have very many ways to remove the Master.
And they're a slightly sad-looking Burning Tree Emissary without any friends to bring along afterwards. And yeah, if Black can get to 3 lands, you know, Thassa's coming down. From there on, drawing the right cards is kind of perfunctory, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, Thassa is going to help that process out. Ooh, but he misses his 3rd land drop, instead playing a Judge's Familiar, which is not really going to block very profitably, and that's a Pulchrinos that...
Wow. That was a super fast game. Sam never getting to the 3rd land, and Mihara just executing on getting creatures onto the board, and ultimately executing Sam.
Yeah, I mean, if he'd, if Sam had enough mana, he would have been able to play a Master of Ways. It could have dealt with all of those 2/2s, but missing his 2nd and then 3rd land drop, and Pulchrinos coming down from Mihara's side made really quick work of Sam.
We'd like to thank Card House Games for being an official card retailer here at Pro Tour Theros. Enter the code PTDUB when ordering on cardhousegames.com for 10% off your next purchase. For more information, visit cardhousegames.com. So we saw some really good work there from Burning Tree Emissary. The card that is able to really accelerate both the red decks and the green decks while having plenty of devotion.
Yeah, the card was designed as a hybrid card because green sort of accelerates mana and fixes it. Red gets temporary mana, so this card does a little bit of both. You can chain several of them out, one into the other. It's obviously really powerful. But as we saw that game, 1 Burning Tree Emissary, even into just a Scavenging Ooze, is a really fast clock. And, the 2nd Burning Tree Emissary that Mihara cast didn't even accelerate into anything. But because they're sitting on the table representing that many green mana symbols, it means that any Nykthos Shrine to Nyx that he draws is going to add like 7-8 mana to his mana pool.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy all of the things that the hybrid creatures suddenly do in Standard now that Devotion's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that hybrid mana symbols still count for Devotion. So even though that green, that little broccoli in the top right corner is very small, it counts just as well for all of the Devotion cards.
The clovers and the fireballs all teaming up to help your Devotion whichever way you want it to be.
Yeah, so, I mean, as I look at the sideboard from Mihara, I mean, he's got 1 Mistcutter Hydra that seems sort of tailor-made for this matchup. I have to think that Mizzium Mortar is also very good. Chandra Pyromaster does a fair amount of work on the little guys like Judge's Familiar and any top deck Cloudfin Raptors. I wonder if he's bringing that in, and then, I don't know... Probably not Burning Earth.
Yeah, Burning Earth,
a mono blue
not
deck.
really for this matchup. I mean, Sam's deck actually doesn't even have the full number of Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. He's only got 5 non-basics in total, right. 4 of which are Mutavault, which obviously plays very well with Master of Waves. And in terms of what Sam can do, gainsays, not doing a whole lot.
No.
Negates, I mean, they stop Planeswalkers, and we know that Mihara has a lot of them. But I guess the interesting thing for me is this is a red-green deck. But it's really a green deck.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether or not it'll be obvious to Sam that he's playing against a deck that's quite as heavy green as it is.
Right, and quite as reliant upon mana acceleration into Planeswalker. And you see 4 Garrett Caller of Beasts, so if I had perfect information and I was Sam, I would absolutely be bringing in negates, but it's hard to tell how much Sam knows. The other card that I would want if I was Sam was Rapid Hybridization, extraordinarily powerful against Mihara's 4 copies of Pelucranos, because if you Rapid Hybridization in response to Pelucranos' ability, it never ends up dealing the damage. Meaning for a single blue mana,
very cool.
Exactly, you can net almost an entire turn.
And I guess the other thing is, there's only one Mistcutter Hydra in Mihara's deck. There's very few ways that Sam can profitably interact. He's got, what, Mutavaults to block, but the tokens that Rapid Hybridization makes, they're green, right?
Right.
Green frog lizards, I believe.
I believe they're frog lizards. That is correct.
So yeah, that gives him, if all he needs is time, that buys him an extra turn blocking, because realistically, Mihara can make these big, big Hydras, right?
Yes, that's true. But again, there's, you know, with one Mistcutter and Pelucranos, I mean, you can deal with a 3/3 a lot easier than you can deal with a 5/5.
Sure.
That grows. The other cards that I think will matter are Sam's 4 copies of Tidebinder Mage, which are very, very good at locking down Elvish Mystics and good at stopping the bleeding if Mihara gets another draw like we just saw.
So we get a chance to look at the players' hands now. Looks like they're both kept, which is good. Get to see a nice, neat game of Magic. And they're a Temple of Abandon. So Mihara here able to improve his draws just a little bit with that Scry.
Yeah, we see a Sam Black keeping in Nightveil Spectre. I was not sure whether that would happen. It's hard to tell how many of Mihara's cards he can profitably cast, but at the same time, just having 3 blue mana symbols in a 2/3 flyer that can gain card advantage and help you at land drops is still evidently very powerful. I
mean, your Bident of Thassa gets an awful lot worse if you can't get through an attack, right?
That's true. I mean, that's the thing about Sam's deck is it's so synergy dependent that you have to make sure not to over sideboard. You know, I mean, you want to have access to the curve of turn 3 Spectre, turn 4 Master of Waves, especially against a deck with as little removal as Mihara's has.
And a Sylvan Caryatid there from Makihito Mihara. He's already accelerating a little bit. 4 mana means 2 Voyaging Satyrs there, so he's going to have access to a huge amount of mana next turn, though nothing to stop that Nightveil Spectre thus far.
Yeah, although we do see in Mihara's hand a Arbor Colossus, which can both block and then kill the Nightveil Spectre with a monstrous ability.
That's a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx straight off the top. If you're going to steal things with the Spectre, stealing lands first has got to be the right way to do it. And this was the land that they added to the deck quite late and think they probably should have more of on the Star City team. So a big hit there for Sam Black.
Yeah, this is going to mean that Sam is going to be able to deploy all the cards in his hand a lot quicker. The question is in what order he wants to cast these. Double Rapid Hybridization going to do a good job of holding off that Arbor Colossus. But Mihara is still potentially capable of casting Garrett Caller of Beast next turn, even if Sam had played a Tidebinder Mage.
It sounds like we got a result from the back tables. Camille Cornelison already 1 game up against David Ochella. They're both on 24 points. And it looks like Sam Black has decided to lead with the god. Thassa, she only needs 1 more blue mana symbol on his side of the board in order to be suitably devoted and able to swing in.
Yeah, I'm looking at Sam's hand. He just drew Cyclonic Rift, which that Nykthos Shrine to Nyx is going to be able to power out. Absolutely incredible hit off the Nightveil Spectre. Mihara, his own Nykthos Shrine to Nyx right off the top. Garrett Caller of Beast, Arbor Colossus, both options for him this turn. But he's going to need to do something about that Thassa sooner rather than later.
And it's really, really awkward for him here that a large proportion of his mana is creatures, right? Because that Cyclonic Rift, it can't do anything about lands,
right?
But it can do quite a lot about literally everything else on Mihara's side of the board.
So right now, Sam's Nykthos netting him +1 mana, but that can get out of hand potentially very quickly.
And Mihara here conveniently giving us a few dice so we can see exactly how much mana he's got, because he's able to untap his lands with the Voyaging Satyr, and this is where things just get really filthy.
Yeah, most of the time you're used to Voyaging Satyr, of course, adding only +1 mana, but being able to untap Nykthos means that can go crazy.
Yeah, this is the reason that potentially the gods in Mihara's deck, Mihara ranked 20 in the world, he can just pile up on Nylea, God of the Hunt, and just power things out, so they're just colossal.
Yeah, right. And Nylea, 4 mana to give something +2/+2, but when you have 12, 13 mana a turn, that turns out not to be as much as an obstacle as you might think. So it looks like 6 mana from Mihara's side right now. Or is that just so many mana that the die is off there to the side?
And having a look at Mihara's hand, he's got a few things that he can do with that mana. A second Planeswalker sounds pretty solid, but Arbor Colossus is able to deal with that flyer, and that will keep Devotion right back down.
Right, and if he plays a Planeswalker, he's got to worry about it getting attacked by that Thassa right there, which is very easy for Sam to turn on with just one more blue mana symbol. We're taking a look at Nykthos Shrine to Nyx now, the card that's causing all of this madness. Basically, it says you pay 3, 2 plus it. You're going to add mana to your mana pool equal to the number of symbols and permanents you have. So the more stuff you cast, the better this gets. And the better this gets, the more it helps you cast stuff. So kind of a very degenerate
when it's good, it's very, very good.
Exactly.
When it's bad, well, you're in trouble anyway.
Yeah, right. And when it's bad, it still taps for colorless.
And yeah, nice little feature there, because it's been compared to things like Gaia's Cradle and
Right.
Solarian Academy,
Cabal
some of the most
Coffer.
powerful cards in the game. Many of them do not tap for mana. This, it's always worth 1. And there is Garruk, Caller of Beasts. Almost immediately putting in the call to get an extra creature on the board. Let's see which ability he's going for here.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, Tim. He could use the middle ability to just immediately put Arbor Colossus into play, but I have to expect him to want a lot more cards than that.
Well, if you're looking for things to do with lots of mana, Pelucranus, not a bad choice. And there is that Mistcutter Hydra. Sam Black is not going to be happy to see that one.
Yeah, I mean, Mihara, they're missing on his Domri raid. Lots of permanents in play are in his hand, potentially off Nyx. The thing that Sam has access to is Cyclonic Rift. He's got, it looks as though he can add 4 or 5, I guess he's 1 mana short of being able to radiate Cyclonic Rift. That was the playtest name.
Overload.
Use the really good part of it.
To bounce just about everything.
Yeah, to bounce just about everything, but he's just not quite there, even if he makes another land drop. So he's got some choices to make right now as to whether he wants to attack with Thassa when he casts something, and where to direct that Knife Veil Spectre as well.
Yeah, Night Veil Spectre being asked to do like a little bit more work than it can really handle here.
Yeah. Exactly. Sam still does have, he can play the non-kicked version of Cyclonic Rift. He has 2 copies of Rapid Hybridization with which he could deal with some of those satyrs, which would also reduce Mihara's count of green mana symbols. So if he's able to take out the Garruk and convert 2 of Mihara's permanents into tokens, that can stop some of the insanity that we're seeing now.
So there we see that there's the Voyaging Satyr being tapped down. Tidebinder Mage, not just about the blue mana symbols, though they're certainly a big factor.
Right, yeah, and neutralizing that satyr is huge right there. I mean, that stops, I believe, somewhere close to 4 mana from Mihara.
And that's only going to get bigger as the bigger threats come down as well.
Because it's 3 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so essentially 3 into 6 mana, the potential that satyr represents.
And just a quick update from one of the back tables. It sounds like Ben Stark has won game 1 against Reduke. You can see them just at the back of the area there. That match being covered on text by Toby Henker, so you'll be able to read about it later on magicthegathering.com.
Okay, so Sam activating Nykthos for 6 blue mana. Again, not quite 7, but he does have the ability to cast Cyclonic Rift, deploy Bident, and play 1 or both of those Rapid Hybridizations.
So all of the satyrs, for now, dealt with. One of them's coming back, but in the meantime, Sam has got the opportunity for pretty much the first time in the game to get some proper hits in.
No, so Sam, interestingly, casting Rapid Hybridization on the Voyaging Satyr before attacking with Thassa. Of course, he can use the ability, Thassa's ability, to make it unblockable so that Mihara can't protect his Garruk. That does cost 2 extra mana, however, in order to do that.
Mihara here, just taking it all.
And playing, of course, Bident of Thassa can allow him to draw some cards.
Well, that's going to be a Planeswalker that might be a little bit tricky for Sam Black to cast. But you never know. I mean, the good thing about the Night Vale Spectre is that sooner or later, like, as fun as it is casting the spells in your deck, casting the spells in your opponent's deck just feels filthy. Like, I love it. It's something that, even when it first came out in the pre-release, I was kind of excited playing it. And at that point, it was just like, yeah, you know, I'm taking your basic lands and casting a few little spells. When you're casting some of the powerful spells in Standard right now, it's just incredible.
Taking a look here at Garrett Caller of Beast, which just died. Of course, Sam, the reason he's prioritizing killing that so much is that he doesn't want Mihara to draw another 3 cards like we saw in the last turn.
And just another update, it sounds like Jeremy Dazani has managed to continue his winning streak. He's 1 game up against Raymond Perez Jr. from the USA.
I'm looking at Sam's mana last turn. He cast Rapid Hybridization, Biden of Thassa, gave his creature unblockability, and...
I'm not sure he did give unblockability. I think that
he
Mihara was just content to keep his creatures on the board for now.
Oh, okay. He just decided to keep the 3/3. I don't know. A lot happened there. I feel like I'm watching a Storm combo deck that's like just a bunch of creatures that do things.
Well, I feel like this is part of the reason that Finkel really likes this deck. It's like a Storm deck that also gets to play with like 20 Shadow Mage Infiltrators.
Yeah, Biden of Thassa, one of my favorite cards. Coastal Piracy was always in my top 10 since I was playing in Mercadian Mass Block PTQs over a decade ago. I'm glad we've got something like that back again.
And that there, the lizard coming in, the frog lizard for 3. And I can't wait to see what's next in the Mihara show here. He's just... The mana engine, like, once it gets going, he can cast so many threats. This is such a fun format. You can just pile monsters onto the board.
That's yet another Voyaging Satyr.
Well, it's the same one that got bounced.
Oh, yeah, sure, okay. So it got bounced. Okay, one was... No.
One's locked down and one got Cyclonic Rifted.
No. Sam still has Cyclonic Rift in his hand. One got Rapid Hybridization, the other got locked down, yeah. But so that is the 3rd copy of Voyaging Satyr, so it seems like sooner or later Mihara is going to be able to have a ton of mana, whether Sam likes it or not.
Pelucranus feeling a bit tasty here. He's getting in a fight, killing off the Night Vale Spectre. That making a big difference in terms of the overall board, it meaning that now Sam, just with the 1 creature to attack with, and any more removal, which we know Pelucranus can fight on its own accord, not just with Domri Raid.
Right.
And that will suddenly mean that it may end up that Thassa's just chilling.
Now, Sam does have the another mana, so he is able to overload Cyclonic Rift this turn if that's what he wants to do.
Overload?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Deep sigh from Mihara.
All my hard work.
And not only does that make Mihara reset his board, but that powers down his Nykthos, meaning it's not going to be just as easy to cast all those spells again right from his hand. He doesn't have the mana acceleration that allowed him to do that. And then 2 more cards from Sam. Goodness, Biden of Thassa is a beating.
Yeah, and especially good when you've got that Shrine in play, because it means that all those cards that you're drawing, it's not like you're ever in a position where you're drawing cards that you can't cast. You can just cast all of them.
And of course, you're making sure that you're drawing the right cards, because Thassa is letting you scry every turn, on top of smacking your opponent upside the head.
On top of making sure that your creatures can get through by making them unblockable. As it turns out, if you give a god its own weapon, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Very on theme. So Amizium Mortars from Mihara, not exactly what you want against your opponent's 5-mana indestructible creature, although getting rid of the Tinebiter Mage would at least mean that Mihara had access to another... Oh, no. The original Voyaging Satyr that was locked down got bounced too. So
Absolutely, yeah.
just doesn't really accomplish a whole lot except for killing a 2/2 that's 2 mana symbols. I mean, it's possible he could just do it and hope that Sam doesn't have any more blue mana symbols, but that's not what we're going to see.
As it turns out, rapid hybridization there, meaning that even though the Tidebinder Mage got killed off, there's a 3/3 to replace it.
Yeah, exactly. And what that allows Sam to do is make both of his creatures unblockable, assuming he can get his devotion high enough, and he's threatening to end the game this turn.
And this kind of the thing that the blue deck does, it just sort of gradually reaches this inevitable position of being able to just crush in games. And so Sam Black there, able to square it up. We're at 1-1 in this matchup now. Qualifiers for the next Pro Tour have begun, and the format is Theros Sealed Deck. You could be on the big stage for Pro Tour Born of the Gods, taking place February 21st to 23rd in Valencia, Spain. For more information, visit wizards.com/PTQ. So, that Pro Tour, you can still qualify for it, but we've got plenty more to go in this one. And how big was Thassa in that last game?
Oh, it was the defining card. I mean, not only was it a 5-5, it killed Garrick, stopping Mihara's card flow. It allowed Sam to become the aggressor very, very quickly by just making all of his creatures unblockable, clocking in for 5, 8, 10 points of damage. And, you know, the Scry was what ensured that his draws were solid enough to allow all that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's other formats where you'd play your crystal balls and similar just to sort of make sure that you can control a little bit what's on the top of your deck. And I'm sure that there will be control decks that just sort of say, most of the time, I'm just going to scry each turn, and that's pretty good. But the extra abilities on there and the fact that sooner or later it just chunks in, it does not take very long for Thassa to kill someone.
No, I mean, and you know, it's like you said too, very, very good with Abidant. The unblockability means that your creatures are going to be connecting. Playing a bunch of creatures means that she's going to be a 5/5. You can use her to block, and she's big enough to kill even Pelucranos, which we've seen come out today, or just hit your opponent upside the head for 5. I mean, I was so amazed at how quickly that game Sam's deck was able to become the aggressor.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we sometimes say about big bounce spells, they get so much better when you have just a little bit of pressure. And Sam's deck can actually exert quite a lot of pressure when it wants to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the deck list, you know, you see 4 Judge's Familiar, 4 Tidebinder Mage, 4 Cloudfin Raptor. You're not really thinking it's killing the opponent that fast, but it's the combination of all of those cards, the rapidity with which Master of Waves can turn you basically from doing nothing to having 10 points of power on the table. And of course, Mutavault just being exceptionally powerful to persevere, even if your opponent is trying to remove all of your creatures.
There we're seeing some of the other players out in the area, not in the feature match area, but just an abundance of talent here at this Pro Tour. It's been kind of crazy, the quality in the feature match area, and the fact that sort of there are so many Hall of Famers doing well, so many old pros, so many new pros, just really on top of their game at this event.
And this is one of our biggest Pro Tours that we've had in recent memory, a combination of invites from the World Magic Cup, silver level pros being able to be invited here.
One, right?
Yeah, exactly. Mean that, you know, we've got almost old school size Pro Tour, a little bit, little more than 400 players, I believe. So the feeling in the room is, you know, there's a ton of energy, there's a ton of anticipation, and, you know, the top tables are some of the game's most popular players. So really exciting Magic that we've been watching, and the players have gotten into it as well.
It's funny, I was speaking to Ben Stark about exactly this as he was waiting to talk to the team just after he got his Hall of Fame ring. And I was like, so Ben, like, do you like having bigger Pro Tours? Like, this is a particularly big one. And he's like, no, every extra player just makes it harder for me to win the Pro Tour. He was sort of saying, even if there was just someone who's back in the booth here, welcome back. Yeah, even if there's one more player, even if they're just showing up and conceding to other people, like that means that other people are doing well. Like I want a nice small Pro Tour so I can win it. I mean, he's won one already.
I was gonna say he knows a thing or two about winning Pro Tours.
But yeah, like, I mean, it's great for us. We love having the big room, but it makes it super tough to do well. And the players that are doing well at this one, it's a big game.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we saw, you know, even the top end of the field pretty tightly clustered. There weren't undefeated players past round 9 or so. The draft pods were just completely brutal. I mean, yeah, you know, it turns out it's pretty hard to win one of these things, and it's harder when the field is huge.
Yeah, it's the big field. I mean, I'm used to European GPs, so this feels like a compact little. Like it's a little gathering of friends, and it does feel like a gathering of friends because all of the best players are here, and like there's people I only see like once or twice a year that sort of they're going to be at the Pro Tour.
Well, I mean, it's so cool to see. I mean, we saw Camille Cornelissen in the feature match area, John Larkin back. He's like, I haven't played Magic in a decade. He's casually just smashing everyone, representing
absolutely,
his hometown.
Team Ireland,
home country, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Go Team Ireland. And I mean, mean, we've seen Rob Doherty, who did a deck tech with
absolutely.
us, also smashing some face. So, I mean, yeah, it's on the other end, though, we have people like Jeremy Dazani, who's had a great last couple of years.
Oh, Dazani is on fire at the moment. And I mean, thinking about European GPs, he's one of the players that we know to look out for at every GP. He's just a machine at the moment, just always putting up good numbers. I mean, you know, not necessarily winning everyone, but as it turns out, no one can win everyone anymore.
Well, exactly. Yeah, the end result of all of that just means that, you know, whether it's the old, the new, kind of the top 25 or the Hall of Fame, there's always, you know, or even like Star City Games or Channel Fireball. I mean, there's all these just different people you can be rooting for.
Well, yeah, like, and sort of thinking about the role of the old pros and the new pros, I was talking to Finkel about his place on the team. You know, he's the second in lifetime earnings in Magic winnings, and on this incredible super team, I was sort of saying, you know, you've got Kai and you got John and you got Gabe, and like three of the top players in the history of the game. Yeah. And he's sort of saying, well, to be honest, if you had to pick someone on our team to win it, it might well be Sam Black or Owen Turtenwald or Reed Duke. You know, at the moment, they've not got a Pro Tour win, but they're just on fire at the moment. All three of them in the top 25. And we're actually going to be jumping across to someone else from the top 25. Ben Stark, he's playing against Reed Duke. We're going to be able to see a little bit of their match now because they're just shuffling up for the next game.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, speaking of star standout players, I mean, Ben's been around for a while, but he's really had his greatest success over the last couple of years. And Reed Duke, I mean, arguably the hottest, you know, most on-fire Magic player active right now.
Yeah, like Reed Duke is just, I mean, he's a real student of the game, and this is part of what I love about him. I mean, part of it is just he's a super nice guy, but like when he's playing, he will just put together, he'll look at what he's doing, he will figure out where he's potentially made a mistake. He's quite humble, he'll take opinions on, and he'll just figure out what he needs to do in order to succeed.
A quite humble Magic player. Please tell me more about this.
Just the one. and then Ben Stark. Actually, I mean, Ben doesn't toot his own horn. What I like about Ben is that he's always trying to make everybody better.
Oh, that's what's so cool. I mean, he was like just sitting at breakfast this morning, just like riffing on like, you know, opinions, but not in a way that like, oh, I want to hear the sound of my own voice. But he was like, oh, whoa, talking about draft. I want to share thoughts. Can I receive your thoughts? I was just like, this is a man who's excited about Magic 8 o'clock in the morning.
And it looks like the players are just getting close to be ready to play now, just sort of shuffling up, getting ready to kick off. I believe that we're one game in here. The first game you'll be able to see entirely on text, but the second game of this match, we're going to the video right now. So we're actually going to get game 3 on this one. So the rubber game to decide who's going to win between Reed Duke and Benjamin Stark.
Ben aggressively shuffling his cards, trying to summon the right mix of lands and spells toward the top of the deck. I'm not quite sure if that's how it works, but, you know, hey, whatever is effective. We're seeing the Channel Fireball version of the red Devotion deck, also featuring 4 Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, and then Reed on exactly the same list that Sam is.
So this is going to be pretty cool, because now we're going to get to see the same deck that we've seen Sam playing, but how it performs in a different matchup. I mean, the plan's got to be kind of similar in terms of drawing cards, but some slightly different threats to worry about here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Channel Fireball deck, its mana acceleration doesn't have all the creatures, doesn't have Voyaging Satyr, etc., relying basically solely on Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, has a little bit more aggressive of a beatdown plan, though. Burning Tree Emissary, Ash Zealot, Frostburn Weird, all cards that are capable of coming down pretty early. He's also able to interact with Reed's permanents a little bit more. He's going to have, after sideboard, Shock, Anger of the Gods, Ratchet Bomb, potentially up to 4 copies of Mizium Mortars, and maybe even Destructive Revelry for Reed's Bidence. So I think a little bit more direct interaction in this matchup.
Yeah, at the very start of the event, so maybe like 3 or 4 rounds in, when we had started to see the relative constructed decks, I spoke to Josh Utter-Layton about how he felt about the Star City Games deck.
Yeah.
And he was sort of saying, well, they've got this Cyclonic Rift, which is lovely, but Mizium Mortars is just kind of like a better version.
No, that's a good point. We're seeing a Frostburn Word from Ben and a Omen Speaker from Reed, suggesting this is not going to quite be a blazingly fast game. Look at Reed's hand, though.
Wow, that's some devotion. So the plan from Reed here is presumably play a bunch of Frostburn Words, then make a billion T tokens, right?
Yeah, and the Omen Speaker was what set his deck up to allow him to have the mana to do that. So we might be seeing, a lot of waves crashing in, and the protection from red exceedingly relevant against Stark's essentially mono-red deck.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's the lesser thought of ability because it's not making a million guys, but protection from red's super important, especially about keeping your guys alive. And when you get multiple Master of Waves, those tokens all get bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The elementals get +1/+1 ability stacks. We see from Ben 2 Domri Raids in his hand, but no green mana to cast them. Like we said, an essentially mono-red deck, but not quite, though. And that means that he's got to just kind of pass to Reed, who missed his 3rd land drop, but has another Frostburn Weird.
I mean, at least Ben's got the good courtesy to also be missing land drops. Like, if they're both doing it, then we just get to see these flurry of spells at some point. But it looks like Reed has found the 3rd land now, so he's successly able to get stuck in there with his 2 Frostburn Weirds.
Yeah, this Frostburn Weird duel here.
The amount of devotion to blue on these boards.
Yeah, Ben unintentionally devoted to blue, perhaps.
It looks like he's got a stomping ground there now, so Ben able to start firing things out. And he's the one with the Nykthos, so as and when he gets a chance to get going, it's not going to be difficult whatsoever for him to overload that Mizium Mortars.
Right. And the question is now basically just what he wants to prioritize. He could cast Porphyros this turn. He could cast Xenagos. He could cast Domri Raid. He could potentially Mizium Mortars if he wanted to. A lot of options for Ben, but he's a little bit behind on tempo, so he has to make sure to not set up for too long.
And he's gone for Xenagos, so this is another way of accelerating his mana potentially here as well, right?
Yeah, exactly, because he can play a 2/2, hope that Xenagos doesn't die this turn. If he does, he's going to take Reed off essentially all his mana. And if he's able to untap, Xenagos can add 2 or even potentially 3 mana depending on what Ben decides to cast.
Also, a way of fixing the colors on his mana, so he can cast more red-green spells if he needs to.
Right, not limited by just that single stomping ground for green mana. Okay, so Reed, though, hitting his 4th land finally, using that Omen Speaker to great effect. The question is, when he starts casting Master of Waves, does he want to start doing it now with 6 Devotion, or does he want to get mega greedy and throw yet another Frostburn Weird onto the table before he starts attacking with a Master of Waves?
I mean, this is not greed, Duke. I'm pretty sure that he's going to just get the creatures out right now.
Well, or he's going to prioritize the Xenagos so highly and just say, okay, I can be patient with my Master of Waves, make sure Xenagos is off the table, and get that 3rd Frostburn Weird down there to make sure that my Master of Waves is essentially lethal when I cast it.
Yeah, this is going to be a terrifying board position all too soon.
Well, and what's terrifying for Ben Stark about this board position is that he's missing his 5th land drop. He had to wait on the stomping grounds, but if he had lands consecutively, he'd at least be able to set up Mizium Mortars, not only taking care of the Master of Waves token, but just wiping Reed's board of blue devotion, ensuring that the next several Master of Waves are just a lot less scary. But without the ability to get to 6 mana, that's not going to be in the cards for him this game.
And of course, this being the deciding game, if it's not in the cards for him now, then he's going to have to worry about it some other match.
Right. Now, if he deploys enough red mana symbols onto the table, that Nykthos Shrine to Nyx is going to give him the amount of mana he needs. But that's going to require, I believe, 2 more red mana symbols.
So there we see a bit of fighting going on. Just enough mana to pump that Frostburn Weird so it can favorably fight the Tidebinder Mage, beating its way out of the cellar it's been locked up in thus far.
Yeah, and I mean, Reed, okay. Oh, wow.
Rapid hybridization. Yeah, that Nykthos Shrine to Nyx now looking at green devotion, I guess, because it makes no difference. There's 1 mana symbol of both red and green now. And yeah, a 3/3. Not quite good enough.
Yeah, Reed knows about the possibility of Mizium Mortars, so is probably going to use that rapid hybridization anyway. But the fact that Ben played the Domri Raid and activated the fight made the hybridization even more of a blowout.
So just the 9 tokens here.
A mere 9 tokens. That's not bad value for 4 mana, is it? 10? That's.
I mean, also the body that. So it's 10 creatures total.
One of which has protection from your opponent's deck.
But for the frog lizard that you've generously given them. Reed Duke always a caring, sharing, giving individual.
Caring, sharing, giving of frog lizards.
Reed, of course, currently ranked number 5, up against number 2 ranked Ben Stark. These heavyweights of the game right now, and both on currently 24 points, looking to go up to 9 wins after this round. A great position to be in at this stage in the Pro Tour.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, great position any way you look at it. You know, they're setting themselves up for a top 8 run, but you've got to think that Reed has the a little bit of an advantage in this current board state.
And Ben here just sort of having a look at everything that Reed Duke has done.
Why tackle him? Send all 3 of those Domri dies.
This is a Ben Stark play I love, which is trying to help your opponent make better plays to kill you.
While your opponent is got 9 elementals.
Wasn't good enough.
I mean, that's the thing. Pro Tour used to be a lot more kind of cutthroat of a, you know, I'm not going to give my opponent any amount of edge. But all these guys know each other. They played against each other a million times. They're totally willing to just kind of talk about the matchup.
And this is a matchup that, I mean, in some respects, this is kind of the iconic matchup of the event. The 2 biggest teams coming into the event, the 2 hallmark decks that they're each playing. Really interesting to see how the 2 decks sort of square off against each other.
I have to ask a rules question. Can this fight him be a Domri?
An interesting question there. Can the Frog Lizard token fight via Domri Raid on Master of Waves?
Right. And Ben gets it right. Basically, it can't because it's Domri that's doing the targeting. The Gruul Guildgate that Ben drew, just kind of taunting him with double Storm Breath Dragon in his hand. He really is able to cast Porphyros. He can hard cast both Mysium Mortars, but that's not going to do anything. It's an army of elementals. Not looking good for Ben right now.
Those seahorses, they're coming in. They're going to get you.
That needs to be a kids' TV show theme song.
It could already be.
Yeah, so Ben just trying to figure a way out of this situation. I mean, he has access to Domri Raid. He has access to Mysium Mortars. But with Reed at 20 life, Porphyro's probably not going to do that much damage right away. Just not a whole lot in Ben's arsenal right now. He just kind of needs to figure out if there's any way he might survive.
I just can't wait for the moment that Reed decides to go big, play the second Master of Waves, and we get to see the judge staff run around to try and find lots of tokens.
So so Ben has 2 blockers at 15 life. He has a Planeswalker too, so I mean it's possible Reed is gonna like try to attack the Planeswalker or something like that. You see Reed just doing the math to try and figure out what's lethal. But with the second Master of Waves and those current elemental tokens getting even bigger, this is almost certainly gonna be a lethal attack.
Never a good feeling when you're looking across at the other player and they're doing like the visual math thing. They're like pointing at things on the board and then they just sort of shrug and go, right, let's do this.
Right, yeah, we see not a second Master, but a Tidebinder Mage tapping down one of Ben's blockers. And the team is coming in with 2 mana up to pump one of the unblocked Frostburn Weirds for even more damage if that's what Reeds wants to do.
Attack you with these.
Just the cheeky little attack just to make sure that Domri gets killed off just in case.
Yeah.
All right, so Ben can block one of the 2 ones. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 17 without any pops. Yeah.
And there's the handshake. Congratulations, Reed Duke beats number 2 ranked player Ben Stark. We can expect a lot of these rankings to change this weekend.
It's just a marginally better creature than the non-active Tidebinder Mage.
Sure.
I figure either you kill the slightly worse creature or I get into damage.
So like I have to like Wrath to be able to win that game. So like it's a 2-power creature without spending mana on it. Since you have 3 different.
You can play Magic at a store near you every Friday, earn Planeswalker points and battle against your friends in Friday Night Magic. October's FNM promo card is Gore Clan Rampager. Visit wizards.com/FNM to find a store near you.
It's all about clocking me as much as possible before I can Wrath.
Well, it's like if I have mana available, then they represent creatures that you have.
So it sounds like we're going to get a little bit
say you're
more
left
Magic.
opening low and you have to reopen
jumping back across now. On the left of our screen, that's Sam Black. On the right, Makihito Mihara. And we have just having a couple of cameras moving around, getting everything in place to show you the deciding game there. We know the deck on the left. Remember, even though the deck on the right looks kind of similar, this is Mihara's more or less mono-green devotion deck rather than the more or less mono-red devotion deck that we saw before.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to see a Xenagos, a red-green token, a Stomping Grounds. We see Xenagos there. He both makes 2/2s with haste and adds mana to your mana pool for each creature you control. The boards right now look rather similar, but yeah, not the same decks from either, or from between Mihara and Stark. Same exact 75 cards between Sam Black and Reed Duke.
And another pair of top 20 ranked players, but in this exact event, these two are pretty much battling for the lead. They're each on 30 points at the moment, and at the end of this game, one of them's going to be on 33.
Yeah, what I'm looking forward to seeing are the cards in Mihara's hand right now, because he has a decent amount of mana. It looks like he lost his Xenagos, or no, he still has access to his Xenagos at 1 loyalty counter. So potential for a lot of mana this turn if he's got the cards in his hand to make use of it.
I mean, I can see that there's a Voyaging Satyr in there for future turns to get plenty of mana going. And ultimately, this is not necessarily the kind of storm deck that the blue deck's trying to be.
Right.
It's more of a sort of rumbling machine that slowly but surely just defeats all opponents under its sort of juggernaut-like movements. And yeah, we just see there Amizian Mortars killing off Frostburn Weird. Mihara very keen to keep Black off Devotion there and using his spells fairly aggressively to keep the board as clear as he can.
Yeah, I mean, if Mihara were to play more creatures, that would add more mana to his mana pool, both with Xenagos and because Nykthos Shrine to next could eventually be activated to count those two. But it is a huge priority of his to try and keep Black off Devotion, because an active Thassa, in addition to just killing Mihara, is going to make that Xenagos not stick around for much longer. So we're actually seeing Mihara say, no, I don't need any mana. I want a 2/2 hasty creature to start putting some pressure on you.
I mean, he's probably going to have to hold back one of those creatures, right? Because there is a Mutavault on Sam Black's side of the board. He doesn't want to just lose Xenagos for nothing.
No, that's a really good point. I mean, Black has some bounce spells, but he doesn't have a lot of them. And, 2 more damage is certainly not worth not having a Planeswalker on the table. Evidently, I said Black has bounce spells. Oh,
Sam Black has
Sam
bounce
Black
spells.
has bounce spells.
It wouldn't feel entirely inappropriate for me at some point for Sam Black to change his name to Sam Blue.
He is known to play the blue cards.
And they're the Voyaging Satyr. That's going to be a big one in future turns. There, a Mutavault on the top of Sam Black's deck. Let's see whether or not he chooses to keep it. He does get to scry every turn thanks to Thassa, God of the Sea.
Yeah, Tom Martell, I was talking to earlier about this deck, said he would play 6 Thassas if he was able to do so, even though it's legendary, because it's just so important to have a Thassa on the 3rd turn of every single game you play with this deck.
And that one of the cool things about Thassa is that it costs just 3, so you can get it down really early. Like, you can get up to Devotion faster to attack if you want to, but also you can just start smoothing your draws super early and just always have a good game.
There are games like this one, though, that you really do start to appreciate the drawback. I mean, Sam has 2 more copies of Thassa in his hand, 2 Rapid Hybridizations, which are great cards, but are not cards that turn on Thassa's Devotion ability. Sam electing to draw a Mutavault there, again, to put more pressure on the Xenagos. But really not a lot of action for Sam right now. He kind of needs to use that Tidebinder Mage aggressively to either keep the Voyaging Satyr in check or to try and remove Mihara's blocker, which is what he's going to do to make room for his Mutavault.
So Mihara put to a decision, would he rather keep Voyaging Satyr around or keep his Planeswalker?
I think you'd much rather keep your Planeswalker. But I mean, Black can't be too upset with this. He's basically able to turn his Mutavault activation into a Strip Mine, keep a creature off the board that makes Mihara's Nykthos a little bit worse and the ability from Xenagos a little bit worse. But that means Xenagos is going to survive an untap and either be able to generate yet another mana for Mihara or put some more pressure on Black and protect itself even more too. We've got
Can
sorry.
we see Mihara's hand?
Yeah. We take a look at Mara's hand. We see a Mizium Mortars, a redundant Nykthos, which thanks to the new legend rule is not always a bad thing because it can essentially reset itself. The question for Mihara, I think, is how all in does he want to go on a single creature if it's going to just get hit with a rapid hybridization? Or is it better to, not worry about monstrous, just put as many threats on the board as you can and use that to power up Mizium Mortars, which would get Black's Tidebinder Mage off the table and again, strand Thassa from ever realistically being able to activate in the near future.
I mean, if he plays Arbor Colossus, then Black has to answer because it basically gives him enough devotion that he can do everything, right?
Right. I mean, that would be my guess, is that Arbor Colossus, when you cast it, it allows Mihara essentially infinite mana the next turn, from a practical perspective, and is just a huge threat that can kill any of Black's Night Veil Specters that Sam would be likely to draw. So I like the play of Arbor Colossus here, but a Pelucranos means that, again, he would be able to remove that Tidebinder Mage. He would eventually be able to protect Xenagos from Mutavault activations. So I think it's pretty close, but Arbor Colossus is a better use of mana and a bigger threat.
And there it is, the 6/6. A really powerful card, that one, and one that, yeah, Sam, I mean, we can see the rapid hybridizations in his hand. Surely there has to be one being used here, and he is using the legend rule to divert a lot of mana to play something else at the same time. He's got a 5 mana. He's playing Pelucranos as well.
Okay, so he is willing to kind of throw away one of the copies of Nykthos in order to power out 2 threats this turn. So I was kind of expecting that he would be a little more hesitant to do that, but a single card to essentially have a Dark Ritual for 4 mana is very, very, very powerful, and now Black is under a lot of pressure right here.
Yeah, I mean, sooner or later, he was going to have to play the second Nykthos. It wasn't as if Sam was playing any land destruction that he needed to worry about. So it was just a matter of when he was going to fire it off as a ritual.
That's
and
a really good
cards
point.
in hand, so
yeah, you see your opponent's deck with Night Veil Spectre. You're not really expecting Encroaching Wastes to be a big
Seas.
threat. Yeah. Yeah, Spreading Seas would shake this format up quite a bit. Yeah, Thassa would approve of Spreading Seas. We're taking a look at the Arbor Colossus. It's on the table right now. It's a 6/6 reach. As if that's not enough, it can get even bigger and destroy any flyers that Sam might have. So one of the 2 very huge monsters on Mihara's side of the board right now.
And one of the cool things about Arbor Colossus is the monstrosity cost compared to the actual cost of the card. It's only 1 more, so it's like very, very achievable to make it a monster on its first attack if you really want to.
Now what we're seeing there is Sam using Thassa's unblockable ability to finally get that Nykthos, get the Xenagos off the table. Again, a lot more challenging to both use Thassa's ability and attack with Mutavaults, which is what Sam had previously been doing. But I think that Mihara got plenty of value off the Xenagos already.
Yeah, and we know, it seems likely that Sam here, he can't really be casting a huge amount. So it's basically just going to be rapid hybridization 1, rapid hybridization the other. At some point you got some 3/3s, but you know what? It could be a lot worse. They could be Pelucranos and an Arbor Colossus.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And we got a result from one of the other tables. Jeremy Dazani has defeated Raymond Perez Jr. He now advances to 33 points, and very, very few players at that points level in a fantastic position for his first Pro Tour Top 8.
Now, we're seeing something pretty interesting here. Black using rapid hybridization on Mihara's turn after letting Mihara untap. I think what he's trying to do is set up a Nykthos activation from Mihara on Pelucranos, because Mihara trying to capitalize on the fact that he was granted access to an untap phase, which sets up Sam's second rapid hybridization perfectly and time walks Mihara's entire turn. So I think Sam's engaging in a little bit of a mind game here with Mihara.
Now, Mihara, he's in contention. He's well got the Pro Tour points to be able to qualify for the Hall of Fame. Currently at 281 lifetime Pro points, former world champion. Do we think he's going to bite on this?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it depends on whether you think your opponent's making an error or whether your opponent's trying to get you to do something.
So he has gone for monstrosity. There's the rapid hybridization. And yeah, Pelucranos, you can go bye-bye. Instead, we have, and indeed, Upper Colossus too, just a couple of 3/3s.
Yeah, a pair of frog lizards. The other upside to Sam of letting Mihara untap and use Polukranos' ability is that he's not getting attacked for 6 by those frog lizards this turn.
Yeah, they currently have Summoning Sickness, just chilling in the back row there. And Sam's not really too worried about blockers because he's got Thassa on board.
That's true. I mean, what Sam might be worried about, though, is the Scavenging Ooze that Mihara just top-decked. Several creatures in the graveyard right here, meaning that Ooze not only can get big, but can gain Mihara a lot of life if Sam is eventually able to try and pull out of this.
Now, is Master of Waves the right answer here? He's got 3 Devotion on board. He's going to be able to make 4 guys, not quite have Thassa turned on, but I guess have a bunch of blockers.
Yeah, I think you have to respect Master of Waves here. It's one of your best top decks. Even if Mihara spends his turn on Mizium Mortars, you still get to keep your Master of Waves. You make Mihara spend his turn. You make him use the Mortars. We're seeing an unblockable attack now from the Tidebinder Mage, and that means Mihara's not making his Scavenging Ooze huge. If he does try to go all in on the Scavenging Ooze, and if he picks up his 6th land from Mortars here, which he does not, you've got enough blockers that the Ooze is not going to pose much of a problem for you.
And Mihara, we see there, has drawn another Polukranos. That potentially a better use of mana for this turn.
Yeah.
Plenty of things to fight there, and protection from red does not equate to protection from Polukranos. The big green monster, it eats worlds, it also eats various creatures on Sam Black's side of the board.
So an interesting decision for Mihara right here. If Black blocks Scavenging Ooze with enough creatures, Mihara is going to either have to let the Ooze go or not cast Polukranos this turn, which could be a big tempo pull for Sam, given that Sam's essentially looking at 2 cards a turn with the Thassa on the board. And Thassa now, of course, very, very close to coming alive.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect draw for Sam here would almost just be like a little creature to turn on Devotion and still have enough mana to activate his Mutavaults and make a really big swing.
Yeah, like even Judge's Familiar is not bad right here. I think you're kind of just trying to draw a spell if you're Sam.
And conveniently with Scry, that's a perfectly reasonable goal.
Mihara, of course, agonizing about this attack. The board is flooded with creatures, and you have to decide if you're holding Mizium Mortars, do you want to start trading with wave tokens and lose the value of being able to overload that? Or do you want to, allow your opponent a chance to untap with an attack that's not necessarily lethal, but is going to take a huge chunk out of your life total?
I mean, I think Mihara here, you can see that sort of things are building up on the other side of the board. I mean, he knows that he's got the Mizium Mortars. He's a little shy of being able to use it right now. He's got to get something going, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Sam, I think the decision here is just how many blockers do you put on Scavenging Ooze? Because, Scavenging Ooze is going to be able to kill all of your wave tokens. But you kind of want to make Mihara spend mana right now because Mihara has 2 cards in hand, and mana is somewhat of a limiting factor for him. So it looks like Sam gonna try to deal with at least one of the 3/3s and throw a lot in front of the Ooze. And interestingly, putting Master himself in front of the Ooze on top of everything else. Again, you see your opponent's Nykthos, and you kind of want to get rid of his colored permanents.
So a little bit of dinner going on here for Scavenging Ooze.
Unfortunately for Sam, the 1 mana Mihara has to spend to wipe Sam's board leaves him exactly enough mana to be able to cast Polukranos this turn. A huge draw for Mihara right now.
There it is, and 2 shots at a huge draw for Sam Black here. Let's see. He scries and fairly quickly puts that one on the bottom.
I believe that was an island, which is not really what he's wanting right now.
And that Frostburn Weird, it does represent 2 loyalty, which is just enough to keep Thassa devoted, even in spite of having lost his Master of Waves. But the board not looking nearly as scary for Mihara right now.
No, that Polukranos was absolutely huge. And while Black is going to be able to turn Thassa on, he's not going to be able to stop Mihara from activating Polukranos on that Tidebinder Mage.
And once Polukranos gets in its fights, it also gets big.
Yes.
And Sam, without really the life total to be able to afford to take any big hits.
Sam is able to deliver, if he wants to, a pretty big hit by making Thassa unblockable using Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, and all of those Mutavaults. But in doing so, he'd have to lose access to the Mutavaults as blockers. So by attacking and not making it unblockable, he's saying, look, okay, I can at least get the Satyr token off the board, or, you know, for some reason, Mihara might just block the Thassa. And Thassa, of course, as a 5/5 indestructible, not going to mind that block from Mihara too much.
I mean, the challenge, I guess, with Thassa is it can't really stay back and block because it's so obvious that Mihara has ways of taking him off devotion when he's at exactly 5
well,
devotion.
that's exactly right, because the 5 mana that Mihara's representing, the 5 lands, are exactly what Polo-Kronos needs to do 2 damage.
And Black effectively has been on a double mulligan this entire game because there's not really any way that Mihara is interacting with that Thassa God of the Sea, and the 2 that are sat in his hand, as much as you can do clever tricks with Nykthos in terms of the legend rule, there's really nothing that you can do with Thassa. She doesn't like to play those games.
Yeah, I mean, you could attack with one Thassa and then play another one to block, assuming you had enough devotion to do so, which is actually a pretty strong play, I think. But Sam doesn't really even have the mana available to do that. And again, he knows his Tidebinder mage can get killed, so there isn't a ton of value in being able to do that. You also lose a card in your hand of which your opponent's unaware, which means that you're not able to bluff as many potential tricks.
Sure, we know that Sam is quite happy to play mind games. For example, the play that we saw early on with the rapid hybridization.
Now, a big top deck for Mihara. Xenagos the Reveler here going to allow him to keep up the pressure and serve as at least a virtual mana source for him to be able to kick his Mizium Mortars next turn if he's able to untap.
Yeah, I mean, Xenagos the Reveler, almost free on mana if he wanted to tick up the loyalty, because he could just sort of say, pay 4 for it, +1, gain 3 mana.
Right.
I mean, it's a real sort of tempo play. It's not dissimilar in some respects to the Burning Tree Emissaries.
Yeah, and it would give him an additional green devotion to turn on Nykthos Shrine to Nyx if Nykthos were untapped. So yeah, and that's exactly what we see him do. Now, it could have been a huge blowout for Sam if he was able to remove one of those creatures in response to the Xenagos activation. It would have kept his Polo-Kronos from there being 5 mana available to activate Polo-Kronos, but if he had that, he probably just would have used it on the Polo-Kronos.
Does that work? Does the first ability on Xenagos not count as a mana ability?
I think the loyalty happens and then you do that. I don't know that, though. I don't know how mana abilities work on Planeswalkers. I assumed they worked at sorcery speed because of the way the rules are written.
I mean, it's mainly just because I know that you can't do that with Nykthos Shrine to Nyx.
Yeah, you definitely cannot do that with Nykthos. So yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that. It's we haven't had, I don't believe we've had a direct mana ability on a Planeswalker before.
Koth of the Hammer had one, didn't he?
Oh, sorry, yeah, you're absolutely right. Koth's middle ability added mana
Much
equal
used.
to your mountains. Yeah, right.
The main thing to worry about
here
is Polo-Kronos has had a little bit of a Barney and is now getting stuck into the sort of yellowy, beigey zone.
Formerly defined as the red zone before the rebranding of the tables.
So that 12 damage coming in Sam Black's direction on just 9 life. Looks like there might be a few Mutavaults jumping under some buses here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That looks like what we're about to see. Some double blocks, at least trying to get the 3/3 off the table from the rapid hybridization. So, you know, this really does eliminate a lot of the threats from Mihara's side. It's just the Polo-Kronos, aka the one that matters the most. There. All right, I'm getting confirmation from our judge on the floor, Rashad, that it is an actual mana ability from Xenagos, so you cannot respond to it.
Yes.
Essentially meaning that number's
Rules
locked
lawyered.
in. Gotten, man. So Sam drew, what's that? I can't quite tell it, but I don't think he scryed anything away.
It looks
so
like
it had to
just
pretty
an
good.
island and those 2 Thassas.
Okay, so
And
he did
there's the
scry
handshake.
away and just didn't draw what he
So
needed to.
Makihito Mihara, he advances to 33 points. He will be likely, I guess, playing against Jeremy Dazani, the only other player still on 33 points. Turns out,
Man.
if you're a former world champion, you're pretty good at Magic.
And, I mean, he brought an amazingly innovative deck to the table. I think it's one of my favorites I've seen in the entire field.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many of the devoted to blue decks, which are very cool. There's a lot of devoted to red decks, but turns out devotion to green's a great thing too. And we're going to go back to the other studio so we can have a talk about exactly where this Pro Tour is going, because it's getting close to top 8 time now.
And at the video wall, we have patiently waiting Brian David Marshall and one Matej Zatlkai. We've got a fantastic deck tech lined up. So here we go. It's our first day 2 standard deck tech.